So what we're going to do now is we're going to build what I'm going to call a basic photo set. So anybody who's ever worked on a set and they've had like the cyclorama or something like a swept out seamless, that's what we're going to make. And that is luckily very, very easy to achieve in Blender. So I'm realizing that this object is called circle, which it should not be. So we're going to learn how to rename objects now. So if you double click on an object, it lets you rename it. So I'm going to rename this Dre, and then if you click somewhere else, boom, it's Dre now. So what we're going to do is click out into our viewport. So when you click on something and it's selected, it'll show up as orange. It'll have this orange outline around it. And then if you want to unselect it, you can kind of just click off somewhere else and just go about whatever you want to do. Then what we're going to do now is we're going to go to add up here in this upper left-hand corner, add mesh. So much of Blender really hinges on these meshes. So this is a real pivotal moment as the first object that you're creating in Blender. So I want you to really take that in and really feel that. Up here, we're going to click on add, and we're going to go to mesh, which you'll be doing a lot, trust me. Then we're going to go to plane. Boom, that's your first object. So now we're going to get into another shortcut, because I know you didn't have enough before. This shortcut is S for scale. And obviously it helps that scale begins with S. I don't know if you got that, but I'm thinking over here. So S for scale, we're going to press S, and then you can kind of just move your mouse around in any direction. And as you can see, the scale of our plane is changing. Now, when you add the plane, it's automatically selected, as you can tell by the orange around it. And if you left click on our other object, that object is selected. So when you do the scale, it scales whatever object is selected. So right when you add the plane, it is selected because you just added it. But just as an FYI, this goes for whatever you click on. And in our little collection area over here, you can see the plane is selected in blue when you select this object, which is our plane. So S for scale, and I'm going to scale it up, I like to kind of imagine if this were a photo set, how big would that photo set be? So maybe like this. I'll do S for scale again, like a little bit bigger. Now, another zone that you would get into in Blender is edit mode. So you can see up here, this displays our current mode that we're in. So right now, it's object mode. A bunch of these other ones I've never been in before, but right now, it's object mode. And you could select edit mode, but the really crucial shortcut is just tab. So you press tab, boom, you're in edit mode. Press tab again, boom, you're out of edit mode. So press tab again to be in edit mode. Again, edit mode is delineated by saying edit mode right here, unsurprisingly. And another thing to note in edit mode, it looks so similar to object mode that it can be confusing when you're beginning. And say you're in here and you're like, oh, I actually want to change the position of this bottle thing. And you click on it and you're like, oh, I can't click on it. I can't click on anything. Whenever I click other objects in here, it doesn't work. Because in edit mode, you are editing one object. So if you want to move another object, you have to go back into object mode to move another object. So if you're ever lost and you're like, oh, I'm like clicking stuff and nothing's happening, you're still in edit mode. And it still happens to me sometimes. I'm like, oh, wait, what's going on? Oh, yeah, just get out of edit mode, go back into object mode. So just as an FYI, when you're in edit mode for that one object. If you wanted to enter edit mode for our other object, which you do not want to do right now, click on that object and then you're in edit mode for that object, but you're only in edit mode for one object at a time. In edit mode, you will see these little squares here. So this first one says vertex select, and that is where we are. So this plane is made up of 4 vertices. An individual is a vertex, apparently. And that's what these dots are. Then, if you click on this middle one, it is edge select. So now you could just left click on a whole edge, and it's white on white So it's a little confusing in here. But you're selecting the edges. Then face select, big surprise here, lets you select a whole face. So this entire object is just one big face. So for different things that you're doing in Blender, you want to be able to select these different parts. And just as an FYI, that's what these are. But so what we're going to do is we're going to be in edge select mode. So that is this middle one. And if you just kind of pause over it, it'll tell you which one it is and say a bunch of stuff I've never read before. But the middle one, we want edge select mode. And again, we are inside of edit mode. So the edge that we want to select is this back edge. And so you can see it's kind of like, it's white on white, but it kind of, a thing happens. You see a little like extra white on there. Because what we want is something in the back of our object behind it. Like as if we were photographing it from the front, we want something to be, you know, underneath it and something behind it. So with that edge selected, we are going to do something called extruding from that edge. So right now, can you guess what the shortcut for extrude is? It's E. Great job. E for extrude. Now you know. So we're going to press E for extrude, and boom. Now you're in Blender, and you added an object, and now you're modifying and changing other objects. We're doing great. So as you'll notice, it's kind of just all over the place now. We're just, are we up, are we down? Nobody knows. So as you may remember from earlier, we have our axes. So what we want is for this to just go straight up on the Z axis. So you press E for extrude, and before you click anything, you're just kind of moving around. Do not left click. Just press Z, don't hold it. You can press and release Z. Now when you move your mouse around, you're just moving up or down. So we want to be up, fairly up. And then left click, and that applies that extrusion. I'm gonna go back and show you again. So we're making sure this edge is clicked, pressing E for extrude. That just kind of makes us go around wherever when you move the mouse around before you click anything. Then we're pressing Z. And if for whatever reason something's going wrong, you selected the wrong side, you can press escape, and that just goes back. Or there's always Command Z. Both of those things work. But so we're clicking on the edge, E for extrude. Our Z axis, we want to go up some amount. And there it is. So, you know, if you moved it up and you were like, oh, I don't think that's enough, you can click on that edge. You can press G for grab again. And same thing, we're kind of like, where are we? We're just kind of moving around in 3D space. And unsurprisingly, we can press Z again to move it up. So that's E. Oh, well, this is actually G followed by Z. E would work, but for the sake of this, I'm saying if you lifted it up and you didn't think it was up high enough, you can click on that edge, press G, and then press Z, and then just move it up a little bit higher. Now we're going to press Tab again to exit out of object mode. And then you can see our whole object is outlined in orange, and you can kind of scroll around and get around to the front of it. And admittedly, this looks bad right now. So, you know, if we're talking about looking realistic, this does not look realistic. I know that. We're still in like the early planning stages. So don't freak out and be like, oh, Andre, this looks like PlayStation 2. I know that. We're gonna get there. These are the steps. You're gonna love it. We're not there yet. We're gonna get there. All right, so now what we have is kind of like a tabletop setup, one thing on the bottom, one thing in the back. I personally like that. The like seamless, not always my favorite. So if you're into this, this is what this looks like. And then if you want more of like the seamless, like the cyc wall type of a feel, as you may imagine, there are a bunch of ways to do that, but we're going to go into the properties, and we're going to go into the modifiers. So over here on this right side, you'll see these different icons. We're going to go to maybe what is a wrench. And so if you kind of just bring your mouse over that, pause, hover over it, it'll show up and say modifier properties. So we're going to left click on that. Then we're going to click on add modifier. I know there's a lot going on in here. Don't be intimidated by the amount of modifiers, most of which I've never used. One that we use all the time though, which is what we're going to use right now, is Subdivision Surface. So we're going to click Subdivision Surface and voila. You get whatever this is. So what Subdivision Surface is doing is it's taking the number of surfaces and it's cutting them in half. And this is happening exponentially, and that's what these numbers are. So the levels viewport number, that's the number of times that each face is getting divided in here. So the render number is the number of times that it's happening in the render. So if you change this number, what you're seeing doesn't change, but it would change in the final render. So it's not something that's really applicable here, but you want these two numbers to be the same. You want these two numbers to be the same. Sometimes you render something out and you're like, oh, it looks weird. It doesn't look the same way it looked before. A lot of times it's because this is what happens. So you want to make sure that these are the same. And the reason that these numbers are different is, like I said, it's being divided exponentially. So it turns into more work for Blender, more things for it to calculate. And it depends on the number of surfaces that you started off with. So for this object, we could get away with more. But in general, you kind of want the least amount that you can use and accomplish what you're trying to do. Because if you get up really high, it can crash Blender, and a lot of times it's just unnecessary. And it's, for an overall workflow, it's better for the numbers to be as low as you can get them to accomplish what you want. And you want them to be the same. So for this, let's start off with 3 and then make sure that the render is also 3. But just to finish that out for context, if you had a situation where you wanted to work on it at 2 so that the workflow was faster inside of Blender, and then leave the render at 3 or 4 so then it renders out, it's more subdivided, you could do that. That's the reason that it's like this. I don't think that's necessary for this project, but that is an explanation for why it is like that. So for now, we'll just say 3. And you can see it's kind of looking like a seamless. It almost looks like one of those foldy things that you open up that are hard to close back up. It kind of looks like that. So you can see that it's giving us our general shape, but it's not quite smooth. You can see that it has little panels to it almost. So we're making sure that that's clicked, and what we're going to do now is a little trick. We're going to go to Object, and we're going to go to Shade Smooth. So left click on Object, scroll down, Shade Smooth. It's kind of like lower middle. Shade Smooth, and voila. Now it's perfectly smooth. You're out here, you're making objects, you're modifying them, you're changing them in different ways. See how fun and simple this is? And don't you just want to be in Blender all the time now and just put the camera down? Just kidding. So now we're getting closer. The next thing that I'm going to do, because it doesn't matter, if you're photographing this from the front, it doesn't matter that the rest of it is looking wonky. But one way to control this, and again, there are multiple ways, so please attack me in the comments if you think that this is wrong. While selecting our plane, we're going to press Tab to enter back into edit mode, and we're going to do something called a loop cut. So you can see we have all of our different things we can do on this left-hand corner. We're going to go down to this one where you hover over it, and it'll say what each one is. You go down to this one, which is the loop cut. So we're going to click on that, and now you'll see that when you hover over the plane, in certain spots, it'll give you this yellow. So you kind of have to be close to an edge for this to do its thing. So we want to, let's go close to this edge down here. on the bottom part of our surface. So right around here, if you left click, you'll see immediately we're already closer. Now, right after you've left clicked, you'll see that this little thing comes up. You can click on it, left click on this little thing that says loop cut and slide. And you have to do this before clicking on anything else. It's like right after you make the loop cut, you click on this. And you can, ooh, now my thing's in the way. You can click left or right to change the number of like loops, I guess. And as you can see, the more that you do, the flatter it sort of becomes. So for that surface, I think 5 looks pretty good. It's another one of those times where you could just keep going up and up and up, but for the most part, it's not necessary. And again, what that's doing is it's just, this loop cut is actually changing. So this subdivision surface is, it's like a modifier that's showing you what it would be like. It's not actually applied to the geometry. It's showing you as if it was applied permanently, but it is not permanently applied to that geometry. So what this loop cut is doing is it's changing that geometry before the subdivision surface is applied to it. The loop cut is changing what the subdivision surface is being applied to, if that makes sense. If it doesn't really matter. You'll get it later. So then we're going to go to the edge on this vertical part, and we're going to click it. And you can see again, it's already getting closer to what a seamless or a cyc would feel like. And then we're going to up that one to, we might as well do 5 since we did the other one as 5. And now you can see, not the greatest sweep of all time, but it basically, you get the drift there. Then, if you click on close to the edge, yeah, if you just kind of hover over in the middle, because our loop cut is still selected over here, so wherever we click is going to be a loop cut. If you want to not be loop cutting, you have to click on this move again to get out of the loop cut. But for right now, we're still in the loop cut, still using that tool. So we're going to click in the middle. And then, just like the other two, we're going to raise this number, might as well be 5. And then just to see what it looks like, I'm going to press Tab to exit out of edit mode and go back into object mode. And I feel like that's not bad. I feel like that is not looking bad as far as your first time making some objects in Blender. You should feel great. You should feel good. So we got our object, we got our background. Isn't it just feeling like photography already? I know that in real life you probably could have done this faster already, but we're getting there. You'll see, it's the basics. We're getting into the workflow. So one more thing, just as an extra credit, because I am crazy apparently. What I would do personally is I would just add, you're never gonna see these edges, but let's say you were. You can, so here if you click in between, you'll see wherever the yellow shows up is where it's doing the loop cut. You can kind of hover over, move it around. Mostly goes from the edges, you put it together. But I would click up here near the top, and you can move these loop cuts. So the loop cut is there. Those edges are selected. You can click on this move, click back to this move tool thing, and you can click on the Z axis, the blue here, left click on it, and raise it up to that other edge, and now you have something that really feels a lot more like a cyc or a seamless. And then you can do the same thing. Click back on loop cut this zone down here, then to move it, click back to move, or you honestly, you don't even have to click back on move to move it. You can press G for grab again, and then Y, and move your mouse around until it looks how you want it to look, but pretty much up to that edge. And then that's how we have it. So, sometimes you would want the sweep, in photography. the amount of sweep is this zone right here. So you may want more of a sweep. You could use less subdivisions, but just as far as how basic making a set could be, this is as basic as making a set can possibly be. So I'm just gonna zoom in a little bit here. And so in our next video in this playlist, we're gonna start really digging into the good stuff. Now that you can make a really basic photo set and import an object in, which are huge, huge, huge start, you're going to want to save. So just like every other program, for Mac, Command S is how you save. And that first time you press Command S, it'll ask you where you want to save it. So just like pick a place and save it there. So I'm going to call this YouTube test.blend. Yeah, so .blend is the file extension. Save it wherever. Left click, save Blender file. Feel free to comment any questions that you have. You're really pretty far on your way already as far as understanding how this program works. So in our next installment, we're going to be talking about lighting. We're really getting into it with this next one, lighting, and it's easy. We're getting into it, but it's easy, and you're going to love it. You're going to be like, how have I not been doing this? It's going to be great. So stick along. Thanks for watching, and check out the next video.